Most investors lose money in biotech penny stocks because they treat them like lottery tickets. But here's the truth. Biotech stocks don't move randomly. They move around catalysts, clinical trial data, FDA approvals, and cash runway timelines. If you understand this cycle, you stop gambling and start investing strategically. In this episode, I'll break down exactly how to approach biotech penny stocks without blowing up your portfolio.
Okay, Joe, I'm ready to dive in. When I hear biotech, my brain immediately just pictures, scientists in white lab coats with bubbling, colorful beakers. Am I close?
I mean, that's definitely part of the aesthetic for sure, but the scope is so much bigger. At its core, biotechnology is just using living organisms or biological systems, think cells, genes, proteins, to develop new products or technologies.
So it's not just about making new medicines for people.
Exactly. That's a huge part of it, the pharmaceutical side, what we call red biotech. But there's also green biotech, that's all agricultural. Think genetically modified crops that are more resistant to drought or pests. And there's even white biotech, which is industrial, like using enzymes in laundry detergents to break down stains better.
My laundry detergent is biotech? That's wild. Okay, so for our purposes, looking at stocks and potential growth, are we focusing mainly on the red biotech, the health and medicine side?
Primarily, yes. That's where you see the most explosive potential, especially with small cap companies. And within that, you have a couple of key areas. There are the therapeutics, the actual drugs, and then there are the diagnostics.
Diagnostics. Like the tests to see if you have something, and therapeutics are the pills to fix it?
Perfect analogy. Diagnostics are the tools that identify the problem, like a super advanced smoke detector. Therapeutics are the fire department that puts out the fire. Both can be incredible investments, but they have very different paths.
Right. And you mentioned small cap companies. Why is that distinction so important? Why not just look at the huge pharmaceutical giants?
Because the small caps are the engine of innovation. The big guys, the Pfizers and Mercks of the world, are like massive cruise ships. They're powerful, stable, but they turn very, very slowly. They're often more focused on marketing and distribution than on pure, groundbreaking discovery.
So the small caps are the little speedboats zipping around finding new islands?
Exactly. They are often hyper-focused on one specific disease or one novel technology. They might have a team of brilliant scientists who've spent a decade on a single molecule. They take all the early-stage risk. And if they find something, if their speedboat finds an island full of treasure, one of two things usually happens.
They either become a cruise ship themselves or,
much more commonly, one of the big cruise ships just buys their speedboat, treasure and all. That's a huge part of the business model. The big pharma companies often let the small caps do the risky, expensive early research, and then they just acquire the successful ones.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're betting on the discovery itself, but also on the possibility of an acquisition. But there has to be a catch. It can't be that simple.
The catch is massive. It's the regulatory environment. The ultimate gatekeeper in the US is the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. A company can have the most brilliant science in the world, a drug that could cure a terrible disease, but if they can't prove to the FDA that it's both safe and effective, it's worth absolutely nothing.
So the FDA is like the final boss in the video game?
That's a perfect way to put it. And to get to that final boss, you have to go through a series of levels, which are the clinical trial phases. First, you have the preclinical stage. That's all lab and animal testing. If that looks promising, the company files an application with the FDA to start testing in humans.
And that's where the famous phases come in, right? Phase 1, 2, 3?
Yep. Phase 1 is all about safety. They give the drug to a very small group of healthy volunteers, maybe 20 to 80 people, just to make sure it doesn't have immediate, terrible side effects. It's the does this hurt people stage.
Okay, that seems logical. What about phase 2?
Phase 2, you expand to a slightly larger group, a few hundred people, but this time they are patients who actually have the disease. Here, you're looking for two things, continuing to monitor safety, but also looking for the first signs of efficacy. Does the drug actually work? This is often a huge hurdle where many, many drugs fail.
So phase 1 is it safe? Or phase 2 is, does it work? So phase 3 must be, does it really work? And is it better than what we already have?
You've got it. That's the huge, incredibly expensive one. We're talking thousands of patients, multiple locations, often over several years. They're comparing the new drug against a placebo or the current standard treatment. They're collecting mountains of data on safety and effectiveness. This is the trial that can make or break a company.
And the whole process from the first lab experiment to getting past phase 3, how long does that typically take?
Easily a decade, sometimes more. And it can cost hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars. And the failure rate is astronomical. Something like 90% of drugs that enter human clinical trials never make it to market.
Wow. So when we're looking at these small cap biotech stocks, we're not just investing in the science. We're investing in a company's ability to navigate this incredibly long, expensive, and risky obstacle course.
That is the absolute heart of it. The science is the ticket to enter the race. But winning the race depends on funding, clinical trial design, management expertise, and navigating the FDA. It's a multifaceted challenge.
Okay, that puts things in perspective. It's not just about finding a cool new idea. It's about finding an idea that can survive a 10-year journey through a minefield.
And that's what makes it so challenging, but also where the opportunity lies. If you can identify a company with the right science and the right plan to navigate that journey, the rewards can be unlike anything else.
Okay, Joe. So last time we talked about the whole landscape, right? The FDA gauntlet, the different types of biotech. It feels like finding a needle in a haystack. But now we have to actually look at the numbers. And I'll be honest, this is where my eyes start to glaze over.
That's completely fair, because the numbers for a small cap biotech company look nothing like the numbers for, I don't know, a company that sells widgets. They're often upside down.
Upside down is a good word for it. You open a financial statement and see revenue, 0, profit, negative 50 million. And you're supposed to think this is a good investment?
Exactly. So you have to throw out the traditional playbook a little bit. The first thing I look at isn't revenue, it's R&D expenditure. Research and development, how much are they spending to fuel the science? If that number is huge compared to everything else, that's actually a good sign. It means they're all in on their pipeline.
So instead of how much are they making, it's how much are they betting on their future success?
Precisely. But that spending leads to the single most important metric for these small companies, the burn rate.
Okay, that sounds intense. And also self-explanatory. It's how fast they're burning through their cash.
You got it. You look at their cash on hand, their balance sheet will show cash and cash equivalents. Let's say it's $100 million. Then you look at their cash flow statement for, say, the last quarter. If they spent $25 million in that quarter, their net cash outflow
is $25 million. So they have 4 quarters of cash left, 1 year.
And that's their runway. The burn rate gives you the runway. How long can this plane stay in the air before it either takes off with an approved drug or it runs out of fuel and crashes?
That's a fantastic analogy. And I assume a 1-year runway isn't ideal, especially since we know from our last chat that FDA approval can take forever.
Not ideal at all. You want to see at least 18 to 24 months of runway. Less than that, and you have to start asking, where is the next tank of fuel coming from? And that gets to the funding sources.
Which means they have to raise more money. And for a small company, that usually means selling more of itself, right? Diluting the shares?
Correct. They'll do a secondary offering, issuing more stock, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if it's done from a position of strength, like after positive phase 2, trial data. But if it's done out of desperation because they're months from insolvency, it can crush the stock price for existing shareholders.
So the burn rate is really a proxy for how much time they have until they're forced to make a tough decision.
Exactly. And it's all tied to the clinical trial catalyst. Let's imagine a company. We'll call it CureX. They have a 12-month runway, which is scary. But their pivotal phase 3 trial results are due in 9 months.
Okay, so they're cutting it close. The runway ends just after the big news is supposed to drop.
Right. If that data is good, boom. The stock could multiply overnight. They can then raise money easily at a much higher share price, causing less dilution. Their financial health is transformed instantly.
And if the data is bad?
If the data is bad, the stock plummets. They have only 3 months of cash left, and now their ability to raise more money is severely compromised. That's the binary event risk in biotech. The numbers on the balance sheet are just a countdown timer to a scientific outcome.
Okay, so putting this into practice, how do you even find all this? I'm picturing myself with a magnifying glass going through hundreds of SEC filings. It seems daunting.
It used to be, but now there are tools. For just raw financial data, platforms like Yahoo Finance or a brokerage platform are fine. You can pull up their quarterly reports, the 10Qs, or the annual 10K.
The 10Q is the quarterly one, right?
Yep. But for biotech specifically, there are specialized tools. Sites like BioPharm Catalyst, for example, are amazing. They don't just give you the financials. They overlay it with a calendar of clinical trial data releases, FDA decision dates. They basically connect the financial runway to the catalyst for you.
So it does the two-part equation. It tells you how long the plane can fly, and it also tells you where the destination airport is on the map and when you're supposed to land.
Perfectly put. And then you can do comparative analysis. You can look at all the companies working on, say, a new Alzheimer's drug. You line them up. Company A has 30 months of cash but is only in phase 1. Company B has 12 months of cash but their phase 3 data is next quarter. Suddenly, the financial picture isn't just numbers, it's a strategic map.
And Company B becomes a lot more interesting despite having less cash on paper. The risk is higher, but the potential outcome is so much closer.
That's the entire game. It's not about finding the safest balance sheet in the traditional sense. It's about finding the company whose financial position is strong enough to reach its next major scientific inflection point. That's it. Survive until the science can speak.
Survive until the science can speak. That makes so much more sense than just looking at profit and loss. You're not buying a business you're funding a business that could be.
And the financials just tell you how long they have to make that could be a reality.
Okay, Joe, I saw another one of those headlines this morning. Some tiny biotech company I'd never heard of, their stock just exploded, up like 300% or something insane before the market even opened. It's always tied to something about like positive trial data.
Right, the classic biotech roller coaster. It's fascinating because that one press release represents years of work and millions, sometimes hundreds of millions, of dollars culminating in a single moment.
And for us, trying to figure out which company to bet on, it feels like trying to guess the lottery numbers. How do you even begin to analyze that? We know the basics of the phases from before. You know, phase 1, 2, 3. But that feels like just knowing the names of the innings in baseball. It doesn't tell you who's going to win.
That's the perfect analogy. Because the name of the phase is less important than its purpose and the specific question it's trying to answer. Think of it less as a linear progression and more as a series of increasingly difficult job interviews for a drug.
A job interview, I like that. So what's the first round, phase 1?
Phase 1 is the basic screening call. The only question being asked is this safe in humans? They take a very small group of healthy volunteers, usually a couple dozen, and they give them a tiny dose. They're not looking to see if the drug cures cancer or reverses aging. They are literally just making sure it doesn't cause immediate catastrophic problems.
So it's the will this new recipe for chili I invented immediately send my friends to the hospital test. You give one brave friend a very small spoonful first.
Exactly. And because the goal is just safety, passing phase 1. Well, it's expected. It's the lowest bar. A stock might get a little bump, but failure here is catastrophic. It means the whole concept is likely dead in the water.
Okay, so the chili is not poisonous. Now for the second interview, phase 2.
Now things get interesting. Phase 2 is the first time you ask, does this actually work? This is where you test the drug on a larger group, maybe 100 or so people who actually have the disease you're trying to treat. This is the first real test of efficacy.
And this is where those big stock jumps happen?
This is a huge catalyst. Because historically, this is where most drugs fail. Getting from a lab concept to a safe molecule is one thing. Getting it to actually do what you want in a complex human body is another. So positive phase 2 data is a massive de-risking event. It's the market suddenly realizing, wait, this might actually be a real drug. That's when you see those 200, 300% gains.
So if you're looking for a company, what are you looking for in their phase 2 results press release? Is it just a thumbs up, thumbs down thing?
Absolutely not. This is where you have to put on your analyst hat. The company is going to spin everything as positively as possible. You need to look for 2 key things: statistical significance, often represented as the p-value, and clinical significance.
Okay, break that down. P-value sounds like something from a stats class I tried to forget.
It is, but it's crucial. In simple terms, a low p-value, usually less than 0.05, means there's a very low probability that the results you're seeing are due to random chance. It's the data's way of saying, we're pretty sure the drug is causing this effect. If the p-value is high, like 0.3, it's basically a shrug. The effect could be real, or it could be a fluke.
Okay, so low p-value means the results are real. What's clinical significance then? Isn't it the same thing?
No. And this is the most important distinction. Clinical significance asks, does anyone care? You could have a weight loss drug that is statistically proven to help people lose 1 ounce over 6 months. The p-value might be incredible, proving the effect is real. But is it clinically meaningful? Will a doctor prescribe it? Will a patient pay for it? No.
Ah, okay. So you need both. You need to prove the effect is real and that the effect is big enough to matter in the real world.
Precisely. And that brings us to phase 3. If phase 2 was the tough interview, phase 3 is the final, all-day, meet the whole team, high-pressure final round. This is the big one. Thousands of patients, multiple locations, often running for years. It costs a fortune, which is why we look at their cash and burn rate, like we talked about.
And what's the question being asked here? If phase 2 already showed that it works?
The question is it better than what we already have? Or, if there's no treatment, is it significantly better than a placebo? This is where you're not just showing it works in a vacuum. You're trying to prove it should become the new standard of care. The FDA needs to see overwhelming evidence that your drug offers a real advantage.
So success in phase 3 is basically the final green light before you go to the FDA and ask to sell it.
Essentially, yes. A successful phase 3 trial is the biggest validation a company can get. It's the event that can turn a small cap research company into a major commercial player, or at the very least, an extremely attractive acquisition target for big pharma.
So when we're combing through these companies and building our list, we're not just looking for a drug in trials. We're looking at what phase, what the specific goal or endpoint of that trial is, and what the data from the previous phase looked like.
Exactly. You look for a company approaching a phase 2 readout. You go back and read their phase 1 data. Was it clean? You look at the design of their phase 2 trial. Is it asking a smart question? Does it have a clear, clinically meaningful endpoint? You're not just a stock picker. You're a preliminary science critic.
And you're trying to do that before the headline comes out and the stock is already up 300%.
That's the entire game. You do the homework so you can make an educated bet on the outcome of the interview, instead of just reading about who got the job the next day.
Okay, Joe? So last time we talked all about the nitty-gritty of clinical trials, which was a lot. My head is still swimming with phase 1s and endpoints.
It is a lot, but it's the bedrock. Now we get to zoom out a bit. Because a successful trial doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? It has to land in a market that actually wants it.
Right, you can invent the world's best cure for a disease nobody has.
Exactly. So that's the first thing we look at, market trends. We're not just looking for a good molecule. We're looking for a good molecule in a neighborhood that's about to get really popular. Think things like gene editing, CRISPR tech, or personalized medicine, treatments tailored to an individual's genetic makeup.
So it's like, instead of just finding a good surfer, you want to find a good surfer who's paddling out just as a giant wave is forming.
Perfect analogy. And these waves, they're often driven by new technology or a new understanding of biology. 10 years ago, mRNA was niche. Now, it's a household name. Companies that were working on that before 2020 were your surfers in perfect position. For 2025, 2026, we might be looking at AI in drug discovery or therapies for age-related diseases.
Okay, so you spot a trend. Say it's neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. That's a huge wave. How do you assess the actual demand? I mean, obviously people want a cure.
It's more specific than that. You have to look at what's called unmet medical need. It's not just, is there a cure? It's, what are the current treatments like? For some diseases, the current standard of care might be pretty good, but it has terrible side effects. So a new drug that's just as effective, but with fewer side effects, has a huge market waiting for it.
Ah, okay. So imagine the only treatment for a headache is a pill that works, but it also makes you intensely dizzy for an hour. If a new company comes along with a pill that just gets rid of the headache, no dizziness, they're going to clean up.
Exactly. That's assessing market demand. But then you have to look around. What if 5 other companies had the same idea? That brings you to the competitive landscape.
How do you even begin to map that out? It seems like there are hundreds of these little companies all working on secret stuff in labs.
It's not as secret as you'd think. You look at their drug pipelines, which are usually public on their investor websites. You can also use databases like clinicaltrials.gov to see who's testing what. You're trying to answer, who else is targeting this specific disease? And how are they targeting it? Are they using a similar mechanism of action?
So, if our headache company has a new kind of molecule, but another company is just slightly tweaking the old dizzy pill formula, our company is probably in a better position.
Potentially, yes. A novel mechanism can be a huge advantage. And that's where intellectual property, or patents, become the whole game. A patent is basically a government-granted monopoly for about 20 years. It's the legal wall that stops a giant pharmaceutical company from just copying your molecule and selling it themselves.
The moat around the castle.
Exactly. A company with a really strong, broad patent on a new class of drugs is infinitely more valuable than one with a weak, narrow patent. And this is also where partnerships come in. If a small-cap biotech signs a development deal with, say, a Pfizer or a Merck,
That's a huge vote of confidence.
it's a massive signal. It's validation. Big Pharma has teams of PhDs vetting these small companies. If they decide to partner and invest hundreds of millions, they've done a ton of due diligence for you. They're basically saying, we think this science is legit and we want in.
So a partnership can sometimes be an even bigger deal than good phase 1 results?
In some ways, yeah. It provides cash, which these small companies desperately need, and it validates the science. And that leads to the final piece of the puzzle, mergers and acquisitions, M&A.
The end game for a lot of these little guys, right? Get bought out.
It's often the best case scenario for investors. Big pharmaceutical companies have a problem. Their blockbuster drugs eventually go off patent, and their revenue drops off a cliff. So they constantly need to refill their pipeline with new drugs. It's often cheaper and faster for them to buy a small company that has a promising drug in phase 2 or 3 than to discover one from scratch.
So you're not just investing in a company to sell a drug, you're investing in a company that's essentially an attractive acquisition target for a bigger fish.
Precisely. A small company with a novel drug in a hot market, with a strong patent, addressing an unmet need. They're not just developing a drug, they're building the perfect M&A candidate. And that's how you connect the science in the lab to the numbers in your portfolio.
It's like putting together a puzzle. The clinical trial data is one piece, but the market, the competition, the patents, that's the rest of the picture.
And when you see the whole picture, that's when you can really spot the potential winners.
Okay, Joe, I'm with you on the science, the financials, all of it. We've gone through the pipeline, the market, but I have to be honest, it still feels a bit like standing at a roulette table.
That's a perfect way to put it. Because if you don't understand the risks, it is gambling. The whole point of this step is to move from gambling to calculated risk-taking.
Okay, so let's calculate. What are the big monsters under the bed here? What are the main risks we're looking at with these small-cap biotechs?
There are 4 big ones. The first, and honestly the biggest, is clinical risk. This is the heart of it. It's the risk that the science just doesn't work. The drug fails in trials.
So a company can have brilliant scientists, a great theory, everything looks perfect on paper. And then in a real human, it does nothing or worse.
Exactly. You spend $100 million and 5 years developing what you think is a miracle cure for, say, a specific type of liver disease. Phase 1 looks good, phase 2 is promising. And then in phase 3, the big one, it turns out it's no better than a sugar pill. That's clinical risk. The whole company's value can evaporate overnight.
Oof, okay. Monster number 1 is the science failing. What's number 2?
Regulatory risk. Let's say your science is perfect. The drug works exactly as you hoped. You still have to get it approved by the FDA or a similar body. They are the final gatekeeper.
But if the data is good, why wouldn't they approve it?
Maybe the side effects are too severe for the benefit it provides. Or maybe they decide your trial wasn't designed correctly. Or they want more data, which means more years and more money you don't have. So your sure thing can get hit with a complete response letter, basically a rejection notice, and the stock craters.
Okay, so the science can fail, or the regulators can say no. I'm starting to see the roulette wheel again.
Hold on, we'll get to how to manage this. The third is financial risk. Remember when we talked about burn rate? That's this risk in action. These companies are burning cash constantly on R&D. The risk is they run out of money before they hit a major milestone, like positive phase 2 data.
And if they do, they have to raise more money, which dilutes my shares and pushes my potential payday further down the road.
Precisely. It's a ticking clock. And the fourth is market risk. Even if you pass clinical trials, get FDA approval, and have enough cash. What if a competitor launches a better, cheaper drug 6 months before you? Your blockbuster drug just became a niche product.
Wow, okay. Clinical, regulatory, financial, market, that's a lot of ways to lose. So how on earth do you mitigate this? How do we make this an investment and not just a lottery ticket?
The single most important strategy is diversification. But not just in the way most people think. It's not enough to just buy 10 different biotech stocks.
What do you mean?
You need to diversify across the risks. For example, don't buy 5 companies that are all facing phase 3 trial results in the same quarter. One bad industry-wide readout could sink them all. Instead, own one that's preclinical, a couple in phase 2, one waiting on an FDA decision, and maybe one that already has a small drug on the market and is trying to expand its use.
So you're spreading your bets across different stages of the pipeline. Some are long shots, some are closer to the finish line.
Exactly. And you also diversify by disease. Don't just own 5 oncology companies. Own one in oncology, one in neurology, one in rare diseases. That way, a scientific breakthrough by a competitor in one area doesn't wipe out your whole portfolio.
That makes so much sense. It's like building a team, not just betting on one star player. What else besides diversification?
Relentless, almost obsessive due diligence. This isn't a sector where you can just read a headline. You have to read the clinical trial data yourself, or at least summaries from experts you trust. You have to listen to the earnings calls and pay attention to the nuance in the CEO's voice. You have to track their cash runway every single quarter.
It sounds like a part-time job.
To do it well, it kind of is. Which brings me to the last, and maybe most important point, setting realistic expectations. You have to go into this knowing that you will have losers. You might have a stock that goes to zero. The goal isn't to be right 100% of the time.
So what is the goal?
The goal is for your 1 or 2 big winners to more than pay for all the losers combined. You could have 7 of your 10 stocks fail, but if one of the other 3 is a 10-bagger, goes up 10 times, your portfolio as a whole does spectacularly well. You have to have the stomach to withstand the losses to be there for the winners.
So it's not about avoiding risk because you can't. It's about understanding the different types, spreading them out, doing your homework, and being mentally prepared for the inevitable failures.
You've got it. That's the difference between the roulette table and a well-managed biotech portfolio. The person at the roulette table hopes. The investor understands the odds and has a plan.
Okay, Joe. So we've covered the science, the financials, the risks. My brain is full of burn rates and phase 2 trials, but now we have to actually find the companies. It feels like trying to find one specific fish in the entire ocean.
That is the perfect analogy. And you don't do it by diving in randomly. You use a fish finder. For us, that's a stock screener. It's the first and most important tool to shrink the ocean down to a manageable pond.
A screener, right? Like those tools on financial websites. What filters are we even setting? Show me companies that will make me rich in 2025?
If only. No, we start with the basics. First, market cap. We're looking for small caps, so we set a range, maybe $300 million to $2 billion. That alone will cut the list from thousands to, still a lot, but fewer.
Okay, so we've filtered by size. What's next? You've drilled into my head that cash is king for these companies.
Exactly. So the next filter is financial health. But it's not about profit. It's about survival. You want to screen for companies with enough cash to last at least 18 to 24 months. Remember the burn rate we talked about? You want a company that isn't going to have to dilute their shares by raising more money in the next 6 months.
Right, so you're not looking for a winner, you're just filtering out the ones that are about to lose. That makes sense. We're avoiding desperation.
Precisely. The third big filter is the clinical pipeline. I'd screen for companies that have at least one drug in phase 2 or phase 3 trials. Phase 1 is just too early, too high risk for this strategy. We want companies approaching a major catalyst, a major data readout.
Okay, so market cap, cash runway, and a drug in later stage trials. That probably gets our list down to a more manageable number, right? Maybe 100 or so?
You'd be surprised, sometimes it's even less than that. But now the real work begins. The screener just gets you into the stadium. It doesn't tell you who's going on to win the game. Now you have to analyze the players.
And by players, you mean the drugs in the pipeline. How do we look at that data without a PhD in molecular biology?
You focus on the what and the so what. First, the what. What is the mechanism of action? You don't need to be an expert, but you should be able to explain in one sentence what the drug is supposed to do. Like, this drug blocks a protein that helps cancer cells hide from the immune system. Simple.
Okay, I can do that. What's the so what?
The so what is the competitive advantage. Is this the first drug to ever do this? That's a huge deal. Or is it the 10th drug trying to do the same thing as 5 others already on the market? If so, its clinical data has to be dramatically better. Not just a little better, but a wow factor better.
So we're looking for either a first-in-class or a best-in-class. A revolutionary approach or just a massively better version of an existing one. That clarifies things. But what about the people running the show?
Critical point. The management team. For a small-cap biotech, you're not just investing in the science, you're investing in the jockey riding the horse. I look for one thing above all else. Have they done this before?
You mean, have they successfully taken a drug through FDA approval into market?
Yes. Or have they successfully sold a company to a larger pharmaceutical giant? You can find this out by reading their bios on the company website. If the CEO, the chief scientific officer, or key board members have a track record of success, that de-risks the investment immensely. They know the playbook. They have the connections.
It's like hiring a builder. You want the one who can show you pictures of the houses they've already built, not just the blueprints for the one they're planning.
Exactly. A flashy blueprint is exciting, but a finished house is proof. So to recap our process so far, we screen for size, cash, and pipeline stage. Then, for that shorter list, we analyze the drug's competitive advantage and the management team's track record.
Okay, let's say we do all that and we have a list of maybe 20 or 30 companies that look promising. How do we get the ongoing information? This isn't a set it and forget it kind of investment.
Absolutely not. You need to know where to look. First, set up alerts for their press releases. That's your primary source. Second, I always read the company's latest investor presentation. It's usually a PDF on their website, and it's their sales pitch. It tells you the story they want you to believe.
Which you then have to verify.
Correct. And for that, you use resources like PubMed to look at the actual scientific papers if you feel adventurous, or more accessible sites like Biopharm Catalyst, which tracks clinical trial dates and catalysts. And don't forget the SEC filings. The 10K annual report is where they have to tell you all the bad stuff they don't put in the shiny presentation.
The 10K, the place where dreams go to be double-checked by lawyers. Got it. So it's a systematic process. Screen, analyze the science, analyze the people, and then set up your information flow.
That's the framework. It turns that vast ocean into a well-defined pond where you actually know what fish you're looking for and you have the right tools to find them. It doesn't guarantee you'll catch a prize winner, but it dramatically improves your odds.
And it stops you from just chasing every shiny lure that swims by.
Which, in biotech, is the most important thing of all.
Okay, so we've done all this work. We know how to screen for companies, how to read clinical data, how to spot risks. I have this. Let's call it a long list of promising small-cap biotechs. Now what? The goal is 20 tickers. Do I just pick my favorite 20 and call it a day?
That is the absolute fastest way to build a portfolio that will give you a heart attack. It's like building a basketball team. You don't just pick the 5 best scorers. You need a rebounder, a defender, a playmaker. They all have to work together.
Right, okay. So it's not just about individual company potential, it's about the portfolio's potential, synergy.
Exactly. And in biotech, that synergy is called diversification. And it's not just about having lots of different tickers. You need diversification across a few specific axes.
Axes like what?
Okay, first, and maybe most obvious, is the therapeutic area. You don't want all 20 of your companies working on, say, a new Alzheimer's drug.
Because if some big breakthrough happens somewhere else, or if the FDA suddenly gets really strict on Alzheimer's drugs for some reason, my whole portfolio gets wiped out.
Precisely. It's correlated risk, so you'd want some oncology, some neurology, maybe a few in rare diseases, a couple in immunology. You spread the bets across different fields of medicine.
Okay, that makes sense. Like not putting all your fruit in one basket. Got it. What's the next axis?
Stage of development. This one is huge for managing timelines and risk. You can't have 20 companies all expecting phase 3 results in the same quarter.
Why not? That sounds kind of exciting, like a biotech Super Bowl month.
It's exciting if they all win. But remember the failure rates. It's more likely to be a supersized disaster. A single phase 3 failure can crater a stock by 80 or 90%. Imagine that happening across half your portfolio in a few weeks.
Oof. Yeah, okay. Point taken. So you'd want to sprinkle them around? A few preclinical, some in phase 1, a bunch in phase 2, and maybe a select few nearing phase 3.
Exactly. That way you have a staggered timeline of potential catalysts. You have your long-term, high-risk, high-reward plays in the early stages, and your more de-risked, nearer-term plays in the later stages. It smooths out the ride.
Okay, that's a really clear way to think about it. Therapeutic area and stage of development. Is there a third axis?
I'd say risk profile, or maybe a better term is modality. Is it a company with a single drug for a single disease? That's a binary bet. It either works or it doesn't. Or is it a company with a platform technology that could generate a dozen different drugs?
So a single asset company versus a platform company. The platform one is inherently less risky because if one drug fails, they still have the whole technology platform to try again with something else.
You got it. So, in your portfolio of 20, you probably want to mix some of those high-octane single-asset moonshots, but balanced with more stable, innovative platform companies that have multiple shots on goal.
So now I have this beautifully diversified portfolio. I've built my basketball team. Do I just let them play for the next 2 years?
No, now you have to be the coach. And the general manager. This is not a set it and forget it situation. Small cap biotech is one of the most dynamic sectors there is. You have to monitor it.
Okay, so what am I watching for? Just the stock price?
The price is the last thing. It's a lagging indicator. You're watching for the news that causes the price to move. Quarterly reports, sure, but more importantly, press releases on clinical trial data. Any communication from the FDA, news of a new partnership with a big pharma company, or, on the flip side, news that they're raising money again, which might dilute your shares.
So my investment thesis for each of the 20 companies has to be a living document. It's not just why I bought it, but what I expect to happen. And I'm checking the news to see if reality is matching my expectations.
You've nailed it. And when it doesn't match, you have to act. Let's say one of your phase 2 companies releases amazing data. The stock doubles. Your initial 5% position is now almost 10% of your portfolio. It's become too big a risk.
So even on good news, I might need to sell some?
It's called trimming. You sell enough to get it back to your original target allocation. You take some profit off the table and rebalance. The reverse is also true. If a company has a setback, not a catastrophic failure, but a delay, and the stock drops 30%, but your thesis is still intact, you might consider adding to the position.
And if it is a catastrophic failure, like their one and only drug fails phase 3, you just cut it loose. You sell it, take the loss, and move on, knowing your diversification protected you from being wiped out.
That's the discipline. The loss on that one stock is capped, but the potential gain on your winners is theoretically unlimited. That's the asymmetry we're trying to capture.
This all comes back to personal goals then, doesn't it? Like my version of this 20-stock portfolio might look really different from yours depending on how much risk I'm willing to take.
Absolutely. Someone younger, with a longer time horizon, might have more preclinical and phase 1 companies. More moonshots. Someone closer to retirement might want more companies in late-stage trials or even with an approved drug already on the market. More stability.
So step 1 isn't even finding the stocks, it's figuring out your own game plan. What you want, what you can stomach. Then you build the portfolio to match.
There you go. It's not about finding the best 20 stocks. It's about finding the best 20 stocks for you and putting them together in a structure that lets you sleep at night.
Subscribe for more updates.